One of the things that I try to do in 6th grade is use as many different sources of materials as possible when they need to get information. Informational text, a novel, and so websites of different types is just one more way to get at them. If they went to my keynote or one of the books to learn about the ships and they couldn't read because they don't know what a beam is or draft, then they could see the website, the video of the ship being made in Rockport, and watch it being made in stop motion photography and watch it being launched and get much of the feeling that I wanted them to get of how small the ships are. They weren't that big. And what goes into making a ship like that, and all the parts of it. The kids wanted to know what a tween deck was. And I could show them a picture, but to actually see it in the flesh was very valuable, and I spent a lot of time looking for that because I wanted them to be able to see that. So I want us to cast our mind back to yesterday when we brainstormed topics that we thought we wanted to know more about. So what were some of the topics that we came up with? Quinn?
Weapons that the Native Americans and the settlers used.
Okay, so some people were interested in what the English thought, some people Native Americans. Cole?
Houses.
Houses. Whose houses?
Indians.
Okay. Casey?
What happened to the characters?
What they ate.
Oh, and food. Food was a big one, right? We've already seen food be a pretty important element in the story. Yes, Quinn?
The history of Jamestown.
History of Jamestown. So some of you wanted to know about how many people lived there eventually. What happened to Jamestown? And yesterday we brainstormed some questions about them, and I have them on your cards, and we're going to hand them out. What happens if you can't find the answer to your question? Courtney?
You'll be able to find something interesting
To share. Excellent, yes. So if you can't find something, a direct answer to your question, that's probably great. That's a great opportunity for you to poke around in all the resources and find something else to share. So this is what it's going to look like. I have 6 laptops set up around the room. 5 of them are websites, and 1 is the keynote that I told you I was going to build because you had so many questions about what things look like muskets and clothing and things like that. So that I set that up over there. Once you guys are out of your seats, I'm going to spread books out along these desks. There are about 4 magazines with topics highlighted with sticky notes. And the books, you just get to explore because there's a title on the book, right? And we've talked a lot about the ways we preview texts that we're going to read to tell whether they have in them what we want to know. And of course, some of them are informational text, which means they have all the structures in there that help us get at that information. So you can just poke around in them to your heart's content. You'll have about 20 minutes. When that's done, we're going to come back to our seats, and I'm going to ask you what you found. And then I'm going to ask you to come up and with markers add that information to our categories that we have up around the room. Oh yeah. Yep. Could not be persuaded to use it. And we heard that. Remember, that was the primary source right at the top of the page. Why don't you write that down? That actually in this book they mention a primary source that we read as part of our reading. So why don't you write that down, and we'll find out a spot to put that, because that has to do with your question about writing. That's really cool. Yeah, it's really cool. Good reading. Good catching.
Some other tribes, Native American tribes, that built other houses out of other things.
Oh, yes, because it had a lot to do with where they lived, right? Just so that we can maybe make it clear to other students where they can find stuff, write down where you found it too. So just make a little note about which laptop or which book you found it on. Okay. Okay. So you started to think about how they hunted and what they did with food, but then you got interested in the houses thing too. Okay, so Felicity also did a lot of work on the houses, and she found a bunch of different things. So excellent, you work together. I love it. I love it. So now you've had a chance to sample the different pieces of technology, the different websites that we had, all the different books. What kind of good stuff did you find? Kyle?
The number of different tribes are 30 in Jamestown.
Okay. In the environs around Jamestown, there were as many as 30 Native American communities, tribes. Whoa.
Well, they just easily got ambushed.
That's a lot. Swim?
Yeah, I would like to say that they did get ambushed, actually. John Smith was captured by the Indian tribe.
Okay.
Saved by Pocahontas.
Okay.
The question is, what did the Native American houses look like and how they were built? I found out that the houses were weaved. They were weaved out of hay, sticks. They used bark to cover it, and they also used mud. And they were called wigwams. In a lot of other tribes, you had houses that were just mats that they wore.
How many of you did get to see that archaeological dig one? So just think about how was the website different in terms of how you got at information and what information was there. How was that different for you than if you just read a book about an archaeological dig? John?
I think it gave, it was quicker, but it still gave good description, and it might take longer to read a book about it.
Okay, it might have taken longer to read a book about it.
In the books, I think I saw more pictures in the books and I found that.
Okay, so the book was more useful to you than the technology was? Okay, Cecily?
On the laptop, I saw like more description than the books.
Okay, so can you tell me what you mean by description?
Like in the book, it didn't say much like how they were made and what they look like, but on the laptop, it said what they look like and how they're built and like so on.
What did the video on the laptop help you with?
It showed them digging up the stuff,
Okay.
so we know that they didn't get take it out of the shop and all of that. But also, it has more detail.
Oh, you got a lot more detail. Yeah. And can you sort of expand on what details you learned? I mean, what kind of details?
With the bead. If I found the bead in the book, it would have just said, it wouldn't have said that the last person had it when you actually talked to him.
Oh, so that was an important thing for you to sort of make that real for you. So the next thing we need to decide is where's our information going to go? You're going to take the index card on the category and write your name next to it. For now, why don't we just tape up what we have? Because one of the things we need to think about as the first class to do this is how we're going to share this with the other three classes so that they can add to it. Because remember we did that with the word wall? You guys got it started, the other kids added, moved your categories around. So something similar is going to happen to this. Because remember the other thing we've talked about is point of view. So you might see something one way and another student in one of the other classes might see it differently. So we might want to move things around a little bit. So for now, just add your card and we can always change things later. This morning I was very happy. They moved with purpose. They had their questions. If they got stumped, they had some other strategies most of the time. If they didn't have another strategy, I was able to help them look, see, oh, that didn't work for you, what about this? They were sharing with each other, I noticed. So I had two kids who had actually very different questions, but the one kid got the other kid interested in her question and shared. So by the end, he actually had answers to 2 questions. So I thought that went really well. I was very happy with how they were able to sort of evaluate whether this piece of text was going to give them their answer, or maybe they should go check out that website that was across the room. Well, one of the results was that I had kids who were able to say that the website didn't help. I had to go to a book, and I had kids for whom the writing, written word wasn't helpful, and they were able to go to the picture. A good example of that was the archaeological dig. I had a student who wanted to know how do they know all this about Jamestown. So she was, and none of the books were really talking about digging things up. And so this short video about the archaeological dig at historic Jamestown, Discovery Jamestown, I think they call it, is just was a way for her to look at people being very excited about digging things up. And she got even more excited today about the small Venetian glass bead that was sitting on that man's palm. And she even said, that a book would have just, oh, we found these things in the dirt. But that guy said, can you believe it? I'm holding something that last saw the light of day when Captain John Smith was alive. Someone who knew John Smith was the last person to see this bead. And that just, to me, that's why we teach history, to make that connection. To me, it's not battle dates. To me, it's artifacts and people. And to excite that in a child is, to me, was why I looked for these pieces. When we start reading again tomorrow, she's going to have a whole different picture of Jamestown. When we start talking about trading, well, they did already start talking about trading food for beads. She knows what that bead looks like. The Native Americans arrived with a basket full of bread and fruit, handed it over, and John Smith handed over beads that looked just like that. She now has a picture in her head. And that to me is huge. I just want her to have that.